we realize our lives as educators are under a microscope, and we could do harm to people. And so one of my community agreements when I do work now is assume best intent. And when your words or a post land on someone in a particular way, and I experienced that this summer, I posted something that landed on someone in a particular way, I apologized to them and I pulled it down. And it wasn't, my intention was not to hurt that person, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter what my intention was. How it landed on that person and how that person felt because I posted it, that's all that mattered. And so when you post something and you didn't have any intention of hurting people, but a parent or a teacher or a colleague reaches out to you and says, this is how that made me feel, don't try to defend yourself, right? There is no post worth dying over. There really is not. There's not a post worth dying over. It is more important that we create space where our young people and our families feel like, okay, that educator could really love my kid. Yeah, and so it's really, I know that's complicated, but I want you to really, really wrestle with that, okay? Yes, intent versus impact, really. Yeah, and so, I mean, this goes to, for my conservative folks, when you say all lives matter, that can show up, if you're teaching Black children, that can show up as you don't care. And you may not understand why that's offensive, but if you're teaching Black babies and you say blue lives matter, so just don't post anything, right? Like, just leave that one all the way alone. Because you may have reason why you're saying that, but if you can't communicate it, which is really hard to communicate in a social media format, I would suggest there's certain things that you just need to stay away from. And there are districts, in fact, where you're not allowed to be on social media for these reasons, because of the ways that people could receive and respond to your language in your post. So I just want to offer that. Let me see, what else? So I also want to add, I've said for a little while now, I worried in June that, with all the uprisings and marches and everyone wants to read the newest anti-racism book and everyone's reading Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. I was asking in June, like, I wonder if, where people will be at in September and October and November and January. And to be honest, I think with the presidential election, race is still going to remain. I'm actually not worried about that being swept under the rug, because I think, particularly with Kamala Harris, that will stay in the forefront of our imaginations. But I do want to encourage us to not just do book readings and have chats with one another, to really think about, what does this mean for our practice? What does it mean to show up for our students and our colleagues in a different way? So to take it from that book talk, the safe stuff that you do in hiding in your own home, to how are you showing up in your virtual classrooms for your colleagues and your students differently. So I really want to encourage that, because what we're really good at, and I can just speak for Washington State, we do a good job of talking. We don't do a great job of acting differently. And so today I read this little piece from Dr. King's speech, his letter from a Birmingham jail. And I want to read this out loud, because I think we tend to really sanitize Dr. King's message. And he was a man I think a lot of people would not like. They didn't like him then, in fact. I mean, we have elevated him as a country to this figure that, he was an amazing human being, but I think a lot of people, if they actually read everything he wrote, would not so love him. He's not a soft-spoken, gentle human. Was he peaceful? Yeah, but he was peaceful. I think about John Lewis and getting into good trouble. That was Dr. King. And one of the things he says is, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And so one of the things I said when I read that today in my speech is, sometimes positive behavior interventions and social emotional learning can become weaponized to make students comply and assimilate. And it gets to that, the absence of tension, instead of the positive piece, which is the presence of justice. So I want us to think again about how do we create brave spaces for children to be their best and bravest selves, not spaces where students comply and assimilate. Because when students and staff, I would argue, have to comply and assimilate, they're never going to be their best selves. And so one of the things that I tried to clarify in the Q&A section after my speech at Character Strong today is social emotional learning should get at helping students check into their emotions and become really healthy emotionally and healthy with one another emotionally. It should not be about behavior modification. It should not be about children learning to comply to like these middle class values and norms. Like, this is what being a good kid is. A good kid walks a certain way. A good kid turns in homework on time. A good kid. What does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to check in with to know how to name that I'm feeling really frustrated with myself today, and being able to tell your teacher up front, I had a really bad sleep last night. My little brother was crying all night. I'm really tired and I'm going to do my best to engage, but I don't know that I can show up as 100% today. That to me is social emotional learning. Not, I'm going to raise my hand and wait to be seen. We get so caught up in that stuff, and I'm not saying that there don't have to be community expectations, but I think we have erred on focusing so much on that, discipline and compliance, as opposed to how do I create space where students can show up as their full selves, where they're able to really check in with their emotions and bring their full selves to the table. And that, it's tricky. It is really tricky. But I just want to offer that. And then this, I didn't get to read this today, but I found this in an article the other day. It's called The Anti-Racist Educator by Tracy Benson and Sarah Fierman. And they talk about growth mindset. And I love this because I spent years teaching growth mindset, but I often saw a focus on teachers teaching children growth mindset while not displaying growth mindset themselves. So teachers teaching children to open their minds to believe that they can learn lots of new things, while the teacher, him or herself or themselves, not wanting to try new things and expand. We have got to, as the adults, model growth mindset. We have got to model it. We cannot ask children to do what we're not willing to do. And so it's really important. But these two teachers are talking about learning how to do racial equity work, learning how to become anti-racist is the epitome of growth mindset. We have to have growth mindset. And here's what they say. What if educators took the same approach regarding the desire to be free of racism? Like intelligence, being anti-racist isn't a fixed trait. Rather, it's built through deliberate, repeated efforts over time. With this mindset, discovering we're biased is not a character indictment. In fact, educators with a growth mindset seek out feedback about potential biases, knowing it will lead to improved practice and ultimately more positive outcomes for learners. Yes to that. Yes to that. And then Ibram X. Kendi addresses this as well, and he's another anti-racist. The only way to undo racism is to consistently identify it and describe it, and then dismantle it. So in my own words, I say this all the time, we can't fix what we're not willing to fix. And as we ask our students to fix stuff all the time, we point out the errors in our students' work all the time, and yet when it gets turned on us and someone critiques us, we take it personally and we want to give up or yell at them and tell them to be quiet. We have to be willing to model that how I make mistakes too. I've got to take feedback too, right? And so super, super important that we model this growth mindset for our students. And I think I want to end here. I want every student, whether adult or child, So whether I'm teaching a class of adults or I'm teaching a class of students, I think the most important thing for me to communicate is I see you and I value what you have to offer. I see you and I value what you have to offer. I don't only see you when you come as I want you to. I don't only see you if you come correct. I see you however you show up, and I value you. And part of the reason you are beautiful is that you are not like her or him or them. You are you. And so I want to offer that in the end should be what we're about. That's what we should be about as parents. It's what we should be about as leaders leading adults. It's what we should be about as classroom teachers leading children, coaches, coaching teams. That's what I love most. When people ask, what's your superpower? Or what superpower would I want? I always say I already have it. I'm able to see the beauty and brilliance in people and reflect it back to them. And that's always been, I hope it's my superpower. It's what I love to do for young people, but I also, as an instructional coach and an administrator, I love to tell teachers, oh my gosh, I saw that lesson today. That was phenomenal. Or I saw that lesson plan you created, or that infographic. That was amazing and so useful. And I want to share that with other people. Can we all show up that way? Can we all show up that way? Imagine how the world would be different if we could each show up that way, right? And so I hope you learned something from me today or heard something that piqued your interest. This is a difficult time, and I think it's absolutely an opportunity. I absolutely believe this is one of the most incredible opportunities we've been given as a country. I absolutely believe that, and I know it's hard because it's different. Anything different and new is hard to do, and so I totally recognize that, and just wanna offer that if we can really frame it in our brains as an opportunity, it will allow us to get creative in ways that we may not have allowed ourselves a year ago to be creative, right? And so see this as an opportunity, educators and parents, to be your most creative self. And also realize you don't have to do it by yourself. So if you are, I know Whitney's on here, and Whitney and I just had a conversation today about, she's thinking about homeschooling. And I said, what if you were to find 2 or 3 other parents and other Black parents, because she's very Afrocentric. And what if you were to find 2 or 3 other parents and get online together and do homeschooling together in some way? Let's get creative. Whether you're in a public school, you're homeschooling, whatever you're doing right now, let's get creative and let's think outside the box and let's create ways to convene. Classroom teachers, you also don't have to do it all. So let's say you're an elementary school teacher and you have one on your team who's really great with math and someone on your team that really loves reading. What if you were to share those responsibilities and do some specialized online stuff for all the second graders, where you have your math expert really do math well, and you have, like, once a week do a special reading thing where that teacher who just loves to teach reading really focuses on that. And so in that way, you could allow your expertise to really be lifted up. Let's say you're a secondary teacher and you have a ton of expertise in a particular season in American history. Why not for the whole district? Could you do a series of lessons that could be shared across the district? No longer are we limited to who's in our building because of technology. So why don't we think outside the box and think about, do some asset development and figure out what do each of the teachers bring. Could you do some elective classes where there's a teacher who has expertise in playing the guitar or braiding hair or crocheting, where anyone in the district could jump in and take that elective class? Again, I think it's such an incredible opportunity to think outside the box of what we have done for so long. So I just want to offer that. I want to encourage you, if you're in a space where you're really frustrated and scared right now, get together with some other folks. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a student, whether you're an educator, don't try to figure this out on yourself. on your own. Don't try to do it by yourself. You can't. This is a movement, Whitney. Absolutely. It's absolutely a movement. I just said this to someone at the Character Strong today, the Character Strong conference today. I can do good things on my own. I can do great things with a team. I can do good things on my own. I can do great things with a team. Y'all, we got a team right here. So share your ideas with one another. Figure out ways to connect. You're on social media. You're watching me right now. So use this space to connect with people. If you're a special education teacher, connect with other SPED teachers. If you're an ELL teacher, connect with other ELL. Shouldn't be that each of you is having to build this plane on your own. Find ways to build the plane together and leverage your tools and resources and expertise. Okay, y'all, I gotta go. I have a meeting at 8 o'clock, it's already 8:05, so I'm late to my meeting. But I just had to show up today because I haven't been here for a couple weeks. But thank you for showing up tonight. I will get to responding to your questions later tonight after my meeting. But thank you for coming. And we'll talk to you soon. Miss Molly, I love you. Miss Pam, I love you too. Whitney, love you, love you, love you. Jeremy, bye. Bye, everybody.